shouldn't take you but a second. We're in 11th grade honors lit, and we're reading the poem Cavalry Crossing a Ford. And we're looking at question number 1 about, well, number 2 about the imagery used in the poem. I saw everything but taste, so then give me just one.
Says, behold the silvery river and the splashing horses. So, you see sight?
Yeah. And?
Sound with the splashing horses.
Right. And? Splashing.
Splashing.
You said that sound, it certainly is, but what other sense does it
Smell?
Touch, I think.
You can kind of smell the river and smell the...
You have a better imagination, but you're right.
Fresh air.
That could be a part of it, yeah. Dude.
After horses water, stop to drink for hay, like horses take the water.
Well, of course, I didn't think of that. That's good, yeah. Alistair?
I was going to say the same thing actually about the drink.
I've never thought of that, very good. How about it, Jameson?
The building flags flutter.
Yes, so what image, what?
That could be like sight and maybe touch.
And I think sound, have you ever heard a flag snapping? You know, you can hear it snap, you know, like you think of a towel and you snapped it, it has a sound to it. Other images? Yeah, well,
The sun heart with a musical clink, which could be sound.
yeah. You notice, yeah.
The brown-faced man. The brown-faced man.
Right, to a sight. Yeah,
Wind is with Green Island, Green Island is sight, and wind
Yeah.
is sound, and also touch.
very good, yeah. Yeah,
Rest on the saddles could be touch.
exactly. You know, they're really, you could divide, imagery is always concrete, but there's some sort of like we think of this as feeling, but feeling could be the word gaily, you know, it's a joy. You know, so joy is not really a sense, is it? It's like touching something is one of the 5 senses. You can't feel joy, you know, outside, but you can feel it inside. I don't know if there's a word for that, but that's you could talk about that as imagery also, yeah. Ben?
Says flags fluttered gaily in the wind, so you could kind of do a sense of sound with like the flags.
Right, sure. And notice the colors. Now this is a war poem, but look at the colors. You got Green Island, you got the flash of something metal, you got a silvery river, you've got brown-faced men, you've got scarlet, blue, and white flag. It surprises me, and I think that's part of the appeal of the poem to me. It's a war poem that's kind of beautiful. This picture, they're not brown and ugly islands, they're green islands. Clearly it's summer, which is where most wars are fought, summer and spring and early fall. At least they used to be. Anyway, just notice the imagery. Number 3, what occasion is being described in the poem, Jeff?
Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of in the title, it's the horses, the man, crossing a river, it shows them,
Yeah, but I still think it's a good question and a good answer. You know, it's self-explanatory, but you read the title. It's not so self-explanatory if you didn't bother to read the title. That's good reason. And, so I think that's a great answer. Look at 4, describe the mood, the tone, and the attitude. Well, mood and tone of the poem, Hartley, what's the mood and tone of the poem?
Well, I think it's kind of like,
Yeah.
And let her finish. Let her finish. Thank you.
well, like the colors make it like brighter than like you said, like it's a war, but like the colors make it like brighter.
So brighter isn't a feeling, but it kinda is. How would you describe the feeling of brighter? Like, I mean, the mood, the word mood and attitude refers to kind of a feeling that you have. So what feeling are you describing when you use the word brighter? As opposed to darker, you know, or a dark day, there'd be a different feeling you vote from that.
Like happy.
I would say that even uses the word gaily, fluttering gaily. So, I mean, it comes out and tells us later, but yeah, you can just put 2 and 2 together.
I would say like hopeful.
Yeah, yes.
I think it's kind of like relief, because it starts with them marching and it ends with them like playing in the water, so it's relief.
Yeah, they are cavalry. This is a war poem. Where did they come from? Where are they going? We don't know. That would be another poem, another story. But what we see here is not war. There's no war going on right here. And I think there is relief there. It says they are negligent. What does that mean? They are, well, first of all, they loiter and they sit negligent, where they have negligent rest. What do they mean by that? Yes.
Like, they don't care where they're sitting, they're kind of just like, not taking into account what's around them.
Yeah, and that would be unusual if you were a veteran soldier. You know, you're always alert. So this tells me that they really do, they understand they're not in danger right now. And that's why they can rest, and which is, you said relief. There's where the relief comes. The water's a relief, the rest is a relief. So the bigger question was, what attitude toward war is presented in the poem? And I kind of gave it away earlier. I don't see anybody getting shot or killed, but these guys have the capacity for that. That's their job. That's what they do. So what does this tell us about war? Yeah.
Even though it's part of a war, there's still like peaceful moments in it.
My guess is, and I think most people would agree, my guess is if you were ever in a war, you're not constantly fighting. The fighting is fewer than, or less than the waiting and the marching and just the daily activity. So war is a lot like life, right? That there are those moments of high action and energy, but most of life is not. That's why the idea of being bored to me is interesting. I've been bored in my life too. When you realize most of life is not up here. You know, it's down here, somewhere in the middle. And so we were meant not to always be high, excited. We're meant to be kind of normal. There's a normal kind of, even in war provides that. I think that's a really good answer. All right, look at 5. Which words describe the attitudes of the soldier? We've looked at some of them. They're resting, negligent, and they are loitering. Any other words describe the soldiers in the poem? What about the fact they're brown-faced?
Maybe covered in dirt and mud from like their travels.
Possibly. What other answer could there be for them?
I was gonna say what he said.
But what else? I don't think you said this, yes.
Slaves.
They might be tanned from walking in the sun.
Right, these guys look like they're in really good health. I mean, the idea of being tanned often suggests healthy, you know, you're outside for sure. And so they're not emaciated, beaten up, bullet-ridden soldiers, they're very healthy, they've been outdoors, they seem, and if they're in the sun, so that's another thing. So they seem really healthy, masculine, men. And then the last one, what does the free verse style contribute to the subject and point of view of the poem? This is a little harder question to answer. Yeah.
I guess the poem kinda, it's talking about like when the soldiers are kinda like free and they're not having to fight, they're just kinda like resting at the brook or whatever.
Yeah.
And the prose, or not the prose, the style is, the verse style is more free as opposed to other verse styles.
That's a really good answer, and you can accept the fist bump there if you want to. I guess not.
He sneezed on it.
Who was it last year? That was 2 years ago. I had a junior, he did that all the time, I'm trying to remember who it was. There were just
Fist
four,
bump
literally,
everybody.
there were 4 of us in the classroom. And he just graduated last year, and he would do that, it was Ben. What's Ben's last name? The other Ben, not you.
Grease.
Who?
Greaves.
Yeah, I don't know why I can't remember his last name. If you know Ben, that's in keeping with his personality, but I always kind of appreciated, he's just like, he's never sad, I never saw him smile, never complained, never pouted or never sad, it was just always kind of upbeat.
That's good.
But I really like Walker's answer, that the free verse is what we're getting out of here. It's a free moment, it's a casual moment. They're being casual, and the moment is casual. I don't know, I like poems like this. They're short and sweet, they're not too complicated, but somehow they draw me in. I love the language. Can I mention one other thing? Notice the contrast between the casual free verse and words like array and betwixt and behold. What kind of words are those? Array, betwixt, behold.
Eloquent.
What?
Eloquent.
Exactly. So the free verse and the eloquent words kind of clash in a way, but they also kind of highlight each other. War is a formal thing. I mean, it's a somber thing, and yet that kind of contrasts with the ease of the language. Good job. All right, so that's Walt Whitman. I hope you can remember him. I've got just enough time to show this to you, and it'll just save us some time. So if you would get out wherever you take notes, I want to give you, we leave at 2:30, so alert me if I lose track of time. Get those, hey, would you get those lights? Again, write this down. This is the other Civil War era poet that we're gonna do, and her poems are even shorter. We have more of them, and we won't get them done before Christmas. But when we come back, we'll finish up Huck Finn, which is due tomorrow, don't forget. And the 6, 7 chapters, expect a quiz. I may not give it to you, but expect one. You know, it's a reading quiz. Just, did you read what the passage is? Please read it.
Is it like the Frankenstein one?
Yeah, just who, what, when, where. It's not serious interpretation. All right, so the second quote we're gonna look at in this unit is Emily Dickinson. The Belle of Amherst was the name of a play about her. Amherst was where she was born, where she spent most of her life. And Belle suggests, you know, lady. We don't know, well, we know a lot of things about her from her poetry. We can assume a lot of things. I don't think we know as much about her as we'd like, and I will explain that. She was born in 1830. I think Whitman was born in 1819, so Whitman was older, he lived longer. She was born into a wealthy, prominent family. Amherst is in Massachusetts, I don't know where it is, there's a college there now. We're talking about the 1830s, I don't know if the college existed then. Her father was, worked at the school, Amherst College, I guess it was. And then he was a state and senator and representative and congressman. So he was kind of a prominent person in the state of Massachusetts. She had a brother, William Austin, and sister Lavinia were her lifelong best friends. So it's William Austin Dickinson, I guess that was his full name. But those were her best friends, her brother and sister. Her mother, again, I'm not giving you much here, but one thing that was said about her was she was a passive woman in a household of forceful personality. So everybody in there kind of tried to dominate the conversation and everything, and she was not that way. And there are only 4 or 5 slides, so not a lot here. All right, can I go on? There are some questions about her. We'll skip them. You'll get the answers, you just won't have the questions. All right. Do you know anything about her? There's one thing people know about her. I'm about to explain that. Did any of you ever read Blue Like Jazz?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all did.
Okay, did you like it?
Good book.
I didn't
So-
really like it.
A lot of Caldwell students we can divide Caldwell students into 2 categories. Those who like Blue Like Jazz and those who like Mere Christianity, because you read them both as a freshman, and some people, if you usually like one, you don't like the other. For some reason, it kind of
Yeah.
divides that. I was more of a Mere Christianity guy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway, I mentioned Blue Like Jazz because the writer of that said that every boy, this is funny to me, I'm gonna tell you what the book said. Every boy at some point in his life falls in love with Emily Dickinson.
Yeah, facts.
Not a fact, I thought it was funny. I can't imagine why he would say that. All right, she made the comment above, I'd like you to write it. It's a beautiful definition, very subjective definition of poetry. She says, if I read a book and it makes my body so cold no fire can warm me, I know that is poetry. That's not a definition. I'm calling it that, but it's not a definition, but it's her explanation of it, the reaction poetry has on it. I frankly don't read a lot of poetry unless I teach it. So I hope I don't sound like a hypocrite. I enjoy it. I enjoy teaching it, and so I enjoy reading. But I don't read it outside. I usually read stories and history and things like that. But I think I do have an appreciation of poetry. She only went to college for 1 year, and it was Mount Holyoke Female Seminary. So she went 1 year. The rest of her life was spent in Amherst. She lived in only 2 houses in all of her life. And I'm not someone that likes to move at all. We've been in the same house for close to 30 years, but prior to that, I guess we moved from, born in Anderson, moved to Atlanta, lived in 3 houses in Greensboro
Where's
before.
Anderson?
I got married, and then we've lived in 1, 2, 3, 4 places since we got married.
Wait, where's Anderson?
Anderson is right across the highway from Clemson University. That's why I'm a Clemson fan. All my family went to Clemson. I went to University of North Carolina, but I grew up a Clemson fan.
Oh.
Anderson College, one of Miss Twiggs' daughters goes there. We may have more than one student. It's become a pretty popular place for people in North Carolina. Anyway, she was a recluse. That's the one thing most people know about Emily Dickinson. She was a homebody. She stayed at home. She stayed in the same house. Something happened to her. We don't know what it was. We don't know what did that to her. At age 18, even though she only went to college for 1 year, she was also more educated than most men or women of her time period. She's a genius, and so she read and read and read. So she spent 6 years at the Amherst Academy, and then 1 year at Mount Holyoke. But she was, as I said, genius. She read, spent the rest of her life reading. While you're finishing that, there's a neat story in the introduction to Red Badge of Courage, which we'll read after Christmas. And the writer of Red Badge of Courage, Stephen Crane, was invited to go to a party held by a famous author. Stephen Crane was not a famous author, guys. So he went to the party. He was not well known. He became well known. And the man who held the party pulled out a book and read some poetry. And Stephen Crane never heard of the author before, but he says it changed his life. And the author was Emily Dickinson. So the poetry of Emily Dickinson changed Stephen Crane. Stephen Crane was a war correspondent. He was a tough guy. He wrote war books. And yet, Emily Dickinson, who is the opposite of all that, she was able to move him. And so I tend to be influenced by other people's opinions of these. So she was a genius. Her character and reputation, the whole family was considered unusual, odd. And she was the most odd of all. I said she was a recluse. A lot of people believe it was a love relation that was foiled somehow. She was in love with somebody and it broke off, and she ends up like going home and like really disappearing. No one has ever been able to explain why. That's just a theory. Nobody knows why. She became known as the myth. Like I've heard of her, but I don't know if she really exists. She never married, and again, a lot of people think it was a broken relationship that ruined her. It didn't ruin her, it just changed her. She was very productive as an author. There's a story about her when people would visit the family, she would stay upstairs and listen and would drop notes down the stairwell to be answered or comment. She would, for some reason, she wouldn't come down and participate, but she would listen and write little notes and drop them so one of the brothers, or the brother or sister would read it. So it should be an excellent texter today or emailer, because you don't have to look somebody in the face to do that. So this is what's odd about her. That's one of the things you need to answer. A recluse is somebody, basically a hermit, who, she's not a hermit, she doesn't live out in the middle of nowhere by herself. No, even Thoreau wasn't a hermit. He only lived a mile out of town, maybe 2 miles. But she was a recluse, right in the middle of town. So she's actually, in some respects, a lot more interesting than Whitman, or most writers we read about. You might not find our lives particularly interesting, but she certainly is. Let me just see what the next slide says. I don't know. Yeah, you probably won't be able to write all this, but we'll come back to it. But she only published a few poems in her lifetime. You can remember that about her. She was published mostly after she died. And when she died, they discovered about 2,000 poems that have since, over a period of about 50 years, been published. So we'll come back to this. Tonight, you're reading the book 12, or 6 through 12, and be prepared to discuss tomorrow. So, all right, we'll see you. Good job.